So rather than using the word genocide, we're just going to say the parenting was damaged.
I feel like that exhibit was put there because it's like, well, we're talking way too much Indigenous here. We gotta throw some white people in the mix.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're not really white. You're not really anything. Where do you belong?
Welcome to Native Calgarian.
Is that the museum doesn't talk about their role in this whole conversation. They don't talk about that they now are caregivers for something that was stolen. There wasn't really wide consultation on what should happen with it. There's no plan for caring for it going forward. So they think like we did awesome because we took one step in the right direction when they literally could have taken 50 steps in the right direction.
Meanwhile, the church is patting themselves on the back with the word donate.
Yeah.
You can't really donate to them with yours.
Yes.
Stolen numbers.
And this is kind of, for me, museums like, their like shining star is like Indigenous stuff.
Which really upsets me because you're literally wearing beaded earrings.
Yeah.
I am. This isn't, and they make it's a past thing.
Right.
And it's not a past thing.
Yeah. And so these are all items in the collection, and then they talk about the different types of collections that they have. So one of the collections that they have is Indigenous Studies, is what they call it. And so all of these are supposed to be collects objects holding cultural and historic value for Indigenous people. Oh, look at this. The Rise zine is part of the Indigenous collection at the Royal Alberta Museum. To me, saying that reconciliation is an Indigenous issue of cultural significance to Indigenous people as opposed to
a Canadian.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or an Albertan issue.
Restoration, there's no concept of those things.
Also, if you look at like the 5 pieces they chose to represent Indigenous studies, a drilling hat,
Right?
Yeah, what's the difference?
2 beaded purses, and 2 reconciliation magazines.
Coming in here, just walking in,
Yeah.
seeing this display, seeing what they had at the front with a Viking, exhibit. It's like, this is a colonial, there's nothing that says reconciliation here. Nothing that says the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. Absolutely nothing. Wanted to point out this, these stones were donated to the museum.
Right.
I'd like to know the story behind that donation.
From who? From where?
Yeah.
Who benefited? Because
Absolutely.
most donations to the museum are not just, I will give this out of whatever. There's a tax receipt or there's a payment in some way.
Totally.
Which is like an old textile warehouse that used to be down the street here.
That's what I mean, though, about it not being like Calgary representative or the rest of Alberta.
Yeah.
Like, this is a very, small, narrow-minded settler colonial exhibition, right?
Yeah.
It's not
But like why?
from Edmonton.
Why are these 2 things beside each other?
Yeah.
Who made that decision?
Yeah. Yeah, we know. We know who made that decision, and it's not Indigenous.
I feel like that exhibit was put there because it's like, well, we're talking way too much Indigenous here. We gotta throw some white people in the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. So they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. We got the diversity section of Alberta stories.
Yeah.
That's beyond Indigenous. Yeah.
So my description of this is ode to Hudson Bay. This is how I would describe this gallery.
They didn't come here under the attempts of peace and friendship. They came to this country because of the rich resources that existed here.
In the meantime, they passed legislation, which was the Indian Act. The Crown decided to operate by the Indian Act and not pay much attention to those treaties.
The Indian Act was the epiphany of not being able to be an Indian anymore. Control,
Colonization, misunderstanding,
violence,
betrayal,
power.
A long list of broken agreements.
Every document, the number of treaties, you go through that, you're going to find that clause that the Indian people do hereby cede, surrender, yield, give up all rights, titles, and privileges. That's not a treaty. That doesn't sound like a treaty.
For the native people, it was about relationships.
Treaty has to be looked at as something as part of something bigger and greater than an X on a paper and a contractual agreement.
Like, it's not explaining who we are, where we are at, where we're standing, the significance of this area that we're on right now. None of that is
I
part of
also
it.
think about like again decisions about spatial design and whether this was influenced by people here or this company in Sweden. But like after the bison is when we start talking about treaty.
This is awful. Because, like, this should be the basis of it, and it's just a small sidebar.
And but it really for me underlines the importance of who tells the story, who makes the decisions, and who they're catering to in telling the story.
Right? And they're not talking about any of their responsibility in any of the disease, any of the, arson, kidnapping kids from their homes. Well, not just the kids.
That's coming up,
forcing
don't worry.
people to leave.
So behind these undescript walls behind me is where you'll find the residential school exhibit. If you didn't know it was here, most people just walk by it. There is a trigger warning in French and English before you go in.
That's probably the most egregious thing I've seen. So
Yeah.
far.
That's why they have to hide the fact that I've had people also that I know who did know about this exhibit came to see it and didn't know it was talking about residential school. So enjoy. Like I said, most people don't know that this is supposed to tell you. That's his piece there. So that's the name of the piece. And again, a lot of people know Al Tronier because he's got international renown. They go, cool, we've got one of his paintings, mission, and they thought it was too triggering for the public. So this is why it was placed here. And also, unless you knew to come behind it, you'd probably walk through the middle of this exhibit.
So the Royal Alberta Museum is tone policing the conversation about Indian residential school.
Well, and it's also about who would be bothered by it.
Exactly. Everyone should be bothered by it. That's the point of the whole.
Yeah.
So if you happen to be a residential school survivor or intergenerational survivor and come into this space, which might trigger thoughts or feelings based on what you see or what you read, maybe you're pissed off because of how it's described, you exit on this side, and what's the first thing you see? The train station where you were picked up to go to residential school.
So okay, let's just say what you said downstairs, that it was too triggering for folks.
Yeah.
How interesting that there's no, if you are upset by this, the First Nation and Métis or the First Nation and Inuit Hope for Wellness line is like, and no trigger warning for Indigenous people.
Right.
Because we're not part of the community.
Well, no,
And-
we're not worried about them being triggered. That's-
Totally. And I'm going to mention this real quick because it always bothers me. I always say Indian residential school because one, I still live under the Indian Act and I'm still ward of the state. And I know Indian is like the equivalent of the N-word, but that's why it should be here because that's what they labeled us. They labeled it Indian residential school. They labeled us Indian. So when they take away the term Indian, it bothers me because it's like trying to erase their negative word that they imposed on us. When that's still law, that's still in the Constitution. Today, we are still wards of the state under the Indian Act.
And this
So-
talks about it in the past tense. This is the history. It's not present day.
Yeah. So, and here's the other thing. Well, these were traditional toys, but they don't tell you they couldn't let them play with them in the Indian residential schools. Like, this was what was taken away for them to never see again.
Yeah.
This is what they burned.
Well, and the question is, again, where did they get this stuff from?
Right? Because these paintings have significance to them. So they have the registry, right? Indian name, white name that was given to them.
But how would you feel if you came in here, looked, and there's your name or your grandparents' name?
Yeah, totally. or your grandparents
Yeah,
right there.
yeah.
I know that's a big issue in Calgary where a lot of folks don't want to go to the Glenbow because their relatives are still literally right there, and their family pieces are on display instead of in possession of them.
Yeah, and it's date unknown and Indian burial. Well, and it's also this idea of people being posed for photos, which is a big issue in this era,
Right?
and photos being taken without people's permission.
This is somebody's family, and we don't even know their family name.
And it came from the United Church in Toronto.
Oh, it just grinds me the way they have done TRC. Like, it perpetuates.
Well, and
the
this
problem.
idea that like post TRC, post commitment to adopt the UN Declaration,
Or the 94
This-
calls to action.
this is
Do you
the way-
see anything
yeah.
here about 94 calls to action?
but this is the way we're still telling the story,
Yeah.
which is a disservice and a lie, which is the opposite of reconciliation.
Totally. 100%. That was really the original quills?
No, that's just the barn. But the other thing with this museum is that they never built in money for renewal of anything. So these exhibits are now going to exist for the next generation, 25 or 30 years.
Totally.
So not only did we not tell the truth at the time,
Yeah.
it's going to be continued to be told, even though, like 30 years from now, this is going to look archaic.
And then this is supposed to be their job. Nothing about 94 calls to action. Nothing about our job and our role as, everyone should be a part of reconciliation.
Well, and this idea that it's systemic and it didn't end in 1996.
Yeah.
They also have the World Cultural Genocide. The bottoms.
That's a really great point, sweetie. So rather than using the word genocide, we're just going to say the parenting was damaged. That's a nice
Well, and
way
it's
to.
important to acknowledge that it was, so it never happens again. Not that it's happening.
Yeah.
I even think that the pieces of this exhibit, paint a happy story.
Totally.
Look, they got clothes, they had entertainment, they had toys.
Nothing about the ongoing starvation.
Right.
That I've never met
No.
an Indigenous person
Or
who doesn't
abuse
talk
in
about
any way.
hungry. Yeah, every.
That's the title.
Yes, it's some kind of victory.
Oh, I thought it was right.
But it's just how you read it, and it's like, why would you even say that? No one's winning anything.
Right. Yeah.
the white perspective.
Provide us with things that represent your present day community, your culture, what tells the story of who you are. Were they compensated for that? Are these things on loan? Mm-hmm. Were they given? Were they sold?
Will they be
I don't
given
know.
back?
Yeah, I don't know.
A non-native. And I used to tell her, why am I still treaty? You've lost yours. That's not right. You're not really quiet. You're not really anything. Where do you belong? Whose society were you in? You belonged to no one.
The Indian Act was discriminatory because the same rule did not apply to the men. So the men were allowed to marry whoever they chose, and that individual would then become a treaty Indian.
The white woman who got married to the native guys, they got native status. Us who were born and raised on the reserve asked to leave the reserve because they didn't have status. My mom lost hers.
Knowing that my mom was going to lose her status along with her children, her mother asked her to fight for it. She didn't want her grandchildren, great-grandchildren to forget who they were.
They obviously have no intention to care about reconciliation because I don't think the word showed up one single time in the entire time we went. It's still written completely by colonial people for colonial people. A lot of Christian-based themes. Not really a real understanding of anything prior to contact, and all of the destructive policies that they did, including Indian residential schools. Their own Indian residential school display doesn't even show the word Indian in it and talk about reconciliation or the 94 calls to action or the United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People. No concept of the history with the RCMP and the violence against Indigenous women. nothing about Indigenous vets actually in their war displays. You know, it just was an absolute erasure. Even for me, I mean, I'm a C-31 Indian Act, and I was upset when I seen their display showing black and white pictures. Like, their own video shows present day people talking about the fight in 1984 or 85 for that to be, but they still use black and white pictures. Like, they just cannot see Indigenous people as present day people. There should just be a whole floor by like Indigenous youth with our art, that conversation about what we're doing today, how we're trying to get healing in our communities, and talking about what actual acts of reconciliation are happening. Nothing like that. The opposite. It was just an erasure of who we are as a people, and our struggles, and there's no equal partnership, and worse, they used incredibly problematic language beyond the black and white photos, beyond the pictures that they used that depicted past tense verbs in any of their signage. There's nothing there that shows partnership. They used harmful language in every display that they had when it came to our relationship. So those are my initial first thoughts. I'm sure tomorrow, after I process it a bit, I'll be more mad. And we had security following us when we were upstairs, and I couldn't help but notice how much I seen it down here as well. So I just think it's wrong, because, you know, we're not treated as part of the community. We're not included as part of the community in that display. The assumption still is that Natives assimilated as opposed to being treaty partners. And when they did talk about treaties, it was just like one-off displays. It's not the core of the conversation. So, and as a Calgarian, obviously I've seen this as Edmonton-based, not really anywhere beyond the Christian privileged white aristocrats of Edmonton. It doesn't tell the story of working class Albertans at all. Like, I don't see any reflection of settler history of the majority of Albertans in there at all. I don't even know if I see a farmer display, actually, when I think about it.
There was a tractor at the end.
There was a tractor at the end, yeah. Like, I know. Like, even for my settler family, there was no real depiction of them. There was a hard hat filled with stickers that didn't even say the word Boilermaker or Roughneck or anything. I think that in Calgary you would see more of a energy-focused history that created the colonial settler state that we see today. I just found it disappointing. Would I recommend anybody make a trip to come here? Not a single person would I recommend that.
So it's not getting a high Yelp review for me?
No, not only is it not going to get a high Yelp review, it's going to get a high "this is racist" review. Yeah.